Today we've got a panel with us representing 3 companies. The approach that we're going to take today is mostly to be an interactive one. So we're going to be really relying on you guys for many of the questions for the panel to get their insights into what they've done well, where they've had successes and such. This subject for me is one that I just find immensely interesting. And it's simply because when you think about the capacity to get things done, you heard it in the keynote this morning where you're in the people business. I've heard many of you say the very same thing about your companies, that you have to get things right with your people. If you're going to be successful, you need an effective culture. Today, in the popular or in the media, culture has received a lot of attention. And some of the ideas out there are fantastic, some of them are absolute complete BS, and some of it is just kind of mildly interesting. What we're hoping to do today is we're going to learn from best practices from our panel members. A quick introduction of myself: my name is Scott McGillivray. I'm with iQmetrix. My position at iQmetrix is Chief Strategy Officer. What that means, I don't know where we got the title off the internet. And that's what we came up with. So I handle the marketing area. I work with the rest of the team in terms of developing our strategy, and I also oversee the people and culture area of the company at iQmetrix. And so we have, when you saw the video this morning, there's so many things I was proud of, and there's so many things in there that made me absolutely cringe. We're not sitting around drinking every day, all day. It's only after 3 on Fridays. Well, maybe a bit more than that. So anyways, before I continue to ramble on any further, I'd like the panel members to take a moment to introduce themselves. We'll start with Stephen at the far end and work our way across.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. My name is Stephen Wakeling. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Phobio, and hopefully most of you guys know that we're the awesome trade-in company, and we do retail services for wireless retailers.
Good afternoon. I'm Krish Patel. I'm the founder and CEO of Wireless Communications. We're a 41-door operator, 4 states in the Southeast, and hopefully we'll have some good discussion today.
I'm Brady Hansen. I'm out of Grand Forks, North Dakota. We have 30 stores up in the 4 states of Minnesota, Iowa, Wisconsin, and North Dakota.
Good afternoon. My name is Terry Holtz, and I am coach at Phobio, and I've installed quite a few different installations of culture in manufacturing and retail businesses.
Great. Thanks very much. So first question, and so just to lob up an easy one for you guys. By the way, I'm a former professor, and I absolutely love to test people. So I'm going to lob up the easy question off first here, and then we'll start getting into a little bit more tricky stuff. What is culture? When you hear the word culture, what does that actually mean to you? Why does it matter? Krish?
You have a great answer here.
All right, so I'll answer it based on my opinion. I actually looked up the definition of culture before we started this, just to have a little understanding of exactly what it means, and it's basically the DNA of your business. It's the way you operate, the way you talk to customers, employees, and it's really the framework of what you want people to see internally and externally, and that's the way we view it.
I'd maybe add to that it's kind of, our leadership team talks about culture as kind of what's happening behind the doors when we're not actually there. When I walk in as the owner, it seems like the store is clean and the pegs are filled and there's no problems, but we've really got to learn how to translate that to the 4:45 Sunday afternoon shift workers that are face to face with the customer every day and giving that experience that we can't control from either a corporate office so it's kind of what happens behind closed doors when you're not there.
I recognize it as a long journey, and it's something that you will continuously work on and understand each other and how you think and act.
Yeah, I think, can you guys all hear me without the mic? Yeah? Okay. Maybe that's easier sometimes. I think culture is how everybody in your organization makes decisions, and basically culture is there whether you think it is or not. It's just a matter of whether you're working on good culture or whether you're neglecting it and maybe you have bad cultures. I don't know. I'll use the mic when it's available.
How much, so you have culture, how much control do you actually have over culture?
I think that it's kind of like steering a boulder with a shotgun kind of thing. I think you have some. I have like we talked a little bit last night. It's like a little bit like gardening. You kind of have to prune away the things that you don't want, and you have to kind of promote the things, fertilize the things that you do want. Instead of if you just kind of let it go, if you just like, and I'm sure you guys have gardens. Like if you just leave them alone, tons of stuff grows there, but it may not be what you want.
So for the rest of the panel members, what have you actually pruned away that you didn't want in place? Krish?
Yeah, so one of our values when we started our company is we wanted to be corporate run, but still be a family business. And so what that means is we still want to have policies, procedures, and structure, but we still want to invite a family style working environment. And the thing about culture is everybody has a culture, and it started from the day your business started, and it's just where you want that culture to go, and that's what I believe he's talking about with molding, pruning. So there's a culture in every business. It just depends on where you want to drive it.
I totally agree with you agreeing with me, by the way. That's awesome.
It's hard to kind of express what you've pruned away, but one of the things that was really near and dear to myself, as well as Krish, is that we have a family first company, and family first was something that, when we were just one store and growing, you've got your fingers in everything, and you kind of listen to what's going on every day, and you're with the people that are making things happen. But as we grew and became more professional, we kind of had to lose some of that. We had employees that would say, well, you're a family first company, so I really don't need to fill in this shift. Or, so you almost have to kind of take this mindset that you believe in your heart and you feel really good about, and almost turn it such that it's positive and productive for the group. And that was one of the things that we really struggled with, losing that kind of family first nomenclature, but yet trying to keep that as a part of our culture, that if somebody's got a little league baseball game, we're not carrying rocket science, we're selling telephones, and we'd like them to go to that little league baseball game.
Some of the things that I realized in building a culture is you need to start with the soft stuff, the deep stuff. Can you be honest and tell the blunt truth and about when you have issues with people? So if you have an issue with someone, can you tell them straight up and work a plan to work through it? We established a GAP meeting, which is a growth accountability partner. And the staff, Stephen works out with his staff, their objectives, and they go through the very personal issues about how they're performing their job on a monthly basis. We do not believe in annual reviews, because if they've gone in the wrong direction for a year, it's not the employee's problem, it's the leader's problem. You should never let anybody drift that way. And we do not tie wages to that. If you work there, you're good. Otherwise, you don't work there. You have to have the right people, and you have to have the courage and not hold people that they're not going to make it. You need to be fair to them and the whole organization and make a decision.
You've brought up a really important point there that I'd like to, we'll circle back in terms of knowing whether you're effective, you have an effective culture or not. We'll come back to that point in a moment. But you brought up something I think that is of interest to many people here, is how do you find the right people? How do you know who's the right person to hire or not hire?
So I'll jump in on this one first. One of the things that we've been very cognizant about from day one is we actually hire for attitude versus skill. And it's very important in our organization that you come in with the right attitude, because we can train to skills and train to KPIs. Those are all behavioral issues that we can work towards, but you have to have the right attitude, and one of our core values is maximize stakeholders. So everybody in our organization is a stakeholder, and we want to empower everyone to take ownership to take care of the customer. So attitude in our books is one of the #1 pieces we look at to hire the right folks.
I would 100% agree with that. I think and I think something Terry would second, is that attitude is kind of 80% of a successful employee. We do that when we're looking for somebody. We have a people team, which is kind of our HR, and they are kind of the gatekeepers for not only are you kind of technically qualified, or if we're hiring a developer, if we're hiring a salesperson, like, do they meet the requirements? But then we have kind of a gatekeeper who kind of identifies whether there be a good culture fit and whether they have that attitude that we need. Because when you're a startup, there's no room for dead weight. You can't have people who are good. Everybody has to be great at their job. And so it's like something, I think Steve Jobs called it the bozo explosion. So we're always like very, concerned that as we grow faster and faster, that we need to make sure that we're having as high quality people as we were when we were only 4 or 5 people in them. So.
How do you know? So for me, when I hear attitude, it's like, yep, good attitude, right attitude. How do you know what's the right attitude, though?
I think, go ahead.
Brady or? No.
I think it's just basically like, are they, the biggest thing is like, do they interact well, and do they have you can kind of understand whether people are going to have fun after work or have fun at work, and we're definitely always looking for the people who kind of are going to have fun doing the thing, because certainly in a startup, it's usually pretty grueling, and you want people who are going to enjoy it and enjoy working with people, and you can kind of, I almost feel like that's the easiest thing. Like, you can almost tell when people kind of walk past my office door whether they're going to be a culture fit or not. It's almost like something that's in the air. That's the least helpful thing I think I can probably share with you guys, but that's what my,
Just have people walk by your door?
Yeah, I'd be willing to do that for anybody in here, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Some of the things I look for is you got to have that additional drive, and if you're excited, if you're passionate about what you're doing in your skill in your area. We also have a little quiz. It's very simple, and there's many of them out there. We just picked one that was very simple and everybody could relate to, and we look at the traits and we see if their natural traits are in gear with the job description. And I think it's very important to understand that the leadership has to set us people up to win.
I think that's like to give them a plug. It's strengths.com. It's management by strengths. It's pretty easy. There's a lot of them out there. We find that it's the most focused. So in this country, before anybody is hired by Phobio, they have to take the quiz, and we just kind of make sure that this just kind of tells us whether they're going to be a right fit, if they're going to enjoy and be successful in what we're hiring them for. It's just kind of a little bit. It's illegal though to do this in Europe. So if you're running European companies, don't.
Yeah, you're gonna have to. We're gonna get the mic.
Yeah, sorry.
But the thing is, you can't use testing in Europe.
So it's strengths.com, and it's great. We have every employee, before they come on, they do it, and it kind of breaks them down into, just kind of strengths of, whether they're organized, whether they're paced, whether they're direct, whether they're outgoing, and just like on a sliding scale for each. And you can kind of tell if somebody is going to generally be a good accountant or generally be a good salesperson. And there's a lot of, anybody can kind of do anything, but we're always looking for people who are going to really enjoy and excel at the things they're doing. So it's just kind of the extra, little couple percent that's helpful.
To piggyback on that, because we're all up here saying that we can spot it, but that's not really scalable. You can't take that back and measure it. So one of the things that we do in our organization is during your interview process, there is aptitude, personality, and background screening. So background is just the details, but there is aptitude and placement. So we measure. Use a benchmark of our best people, and then bench that against the applicant to see, how they compare and how they don't compare. Because, everybody's opinion of attitude could be different, but it's really that take ownership mentality and until the job gets done mentality in our organization. And you can really test that and see, if they're there to do 9 to 5 and get a checklist done, or they're there to get a process done until the job gets done.
One other important factor, in one of Jim Collins' book, he gives an illustration of the flywheel and the momentum in your organization. And the part of the right people is you have to be highly disciplined in thought and in action. So that is very, very important, and that's part of having the passion to moving into the unknown and taking risk, calculated risk, and in doing that. And that's the hard things for a lot of people to do because they don't want to fail, and so they'll hesitate and they don't move forward.
Good, thank you. Brady, since you have the mic, describe your culture.
That's a good question. I don't know.
So there's a good answer, though, too.
Yes. Our culture is something that we've tried to empower people to make decisions. We've tried to allow them to make mistakes. We want to believe that our culture is one of taking care of the customer first. But what I struggle with personally is knowing if that is happening in the store and knowing if that's happening, 15 hours away from our head office. And so our culture is built around the idea of developing people and that leadership development that we really try to bring that development from both the district leader role to the store leader role to the sales partners, and hopefully we can continue to show them an opportunity. We're a growing company. We're out there actively looking for acquisitions and wanting to purchase more stores. And when we have those opportunities, our employees can see opportunities to then raise up into higher positions and become, we just set up a new district recently, so that created a lot of excitement and a lot of internal applications. We try to always promote from within where possible. Sometimes that isn't possible, so we really try to, when somebody asks a question about where you look for good people, we use Indeed.com and hope we trained our store leaders who are doing the interviews well enough to pick the right people. I mean, they're the ones that have to lead them on a daily basis, and if we can develop that role and hopefully give them some guidance as to what we want and, a clear list of core values that's important to us, then hopefully that taking care of the employee is going to help take care of the customer, and then profits should just fall into line after that.
Great, thank you.
All right. By no means do I claim our culture is where we want it to be. Like I said in the beginning, it changes, it evolves regularly. So it's always a work in progress. So in my eyes, our culture is a very customer-centric organization. Actually, our mission statement, a piece of it says to provide an untouchable customer experience. And so what that means in our business is that regardless if you're making $1 or not, you're taking care of the customer and you're doing whatever it takes to make it happen. And so we actually have learned a lot of stuff from IQ and from other vendors that are out there about culture. So one of the things that I thought it was funny, this morning on the opening video, that everybody at IQ looks like they drink all day. And sometimes that could be the case, I don't know. But actually, it's funny, in our business, we have something called Thirsty Thursdays, and once a month, we take everybody out and it's a time just to brainstorm. And we created that culture because we wanted employees to feel like they're a stakeholder, and we wanted them to feel as if they're a part of the change, because we've gotten better traction when everybody's a part of the change rather than one person leading that change. And that's why one of our core values, maximize stakeholders, is really built around the day-to-day culture and how they're empowered to take care of the decisions that are put in front of them.
Thank you.
I think we've broken our culture down into 4 pieces. And we have it. I just had to write it down quickly to make sure I remembered all of it here, because it's normally like right up on my office wall, and I'm always quoting from it. So we've broken it down into who, what, how, and why to kind of basically illustrate to everybody who works at Phobio globally. And we're now we're in Italy, Germany, the U.S., and Australia. So we've got a pretty widely dispersed team. But so we're spirited entrepreneurs, or we're a team of spirited entrepreneurs who love people, technology, and solving problems. And we felt like that defines us all pretty well. What we do, we create services that provide the most possible value for consumers. And that's pretty easy. How we do it, we listen to retailers. It's pretty easy. And why we do it, and this was the hardest hardest thing for us to come up with as a group of founders. We probably spent maybe close to 2 days just trying to answer this question on a whiteboard after a strategic planning session, and we finally boiled it down to one sentence. And I mean, this is everything. You know, this is like describes why, you know, 2 of us speak Mandarin, why, you know, we have, you know, a couple of us have pilot's licenses, down to like why our CTO Drew doesn't use a standard QWERTY keyboard. He uses a Dvorak keyboard, which he had to relearn typing in his 20s because he believed that he would make him a faster programmer even after the 2 years. So it was like, why do we do this crazy stuff? And we decided that no matter what, we challenge ourselves at every opportunity and remain confident and calm in the face of chaos. And we felt like that was the one thing that if we could impart that little kernel into every employee at Phobio, we'd probably be okay. So.
Part of that is we don't teach people how to feel good, but we teach people to rejoice in the wins that we all have, and we work hard at it. And sometimes you have to work hard, but it's nothing feels better than winning.
What, as you know, when you take a look at your role within the organization as senior leaders, what is your responsibility as it relates to culture? And maybe use some examples of things that you've done that have been very successful, or maybe, you know, something that has been successful. Like, for an example of unsuccessful was the day when I came up with the idea we should have a performance management system. We're going to give everybody a grade. That didn't work very well. In fact, that flopped horribly. But it just didn't fit our culture. So maybe highlight something, you know, as it pertains to your role, the success or failure, what's really worked.
Yeah, I've got some corporate team members here, actually in the audience, I believe. So I'd say my role is definitely I have to be a micromanager. I have to be involved in everything, and I want to make every decision.
Awesome.
That's actually what I failed on, because I am a little bit like that. And really, my role is trying to talk more about developing people. And if our team, our corporate staff works their ass off every day, they are pouring their hearts out for our company. And we don't always feel the same way with our sales partners that are covering the late night shifts or the Sunday afternoon shifts. And you know, we want to believe that our employees are as engaged as our corporate team or as our leadership team is. So really, I think my role is kind of continuing to morph into more of that. How can I develop the leaders in our entire organization so that they can develop the partners that are out there in the fields working with the customers?
So in addition to what these folks have said, you know, the way I see my role is simple: to lead change and lead innovation. And when it relates to culture, you have to lead that direction, lead that change, or lead that innovation in culture. And one of the things that I said earlier is culture is not defined one day. It's a continued involvement to where you want it to be and where you want it to grow to. So our culture is very competitive. You know, we celebrate every single win, and we double that for every single loss that, you know, as far as passion and energy that goes into where our opportunities are. So one of the questions we ask almost every single applicant that works, that wants to join our team, it's very simple, and this really defines our culture, is do you love to win, or do you hate to lose? And you ask yourself that, and that will help you also understand what your culture is like in your organization.
How do you answer that question?
Yeah.
Well,
I love to hate to win. No.
I love to hate to win.
Yeah, how you want to answer that?
No, go ahead.
I love to win. I don't know. I think that's the easy one. I think, just to kind of back to your question, I think that's ultimately my responsibility as CEO, and kind of primary responsibility for every CEO is culture and fostering good culture. There's not much that I can do to create culture, as I don't have like a culture box under my desk that's just computer. I can kind of identify like when things are going, you know, badly or going well, and kind of I try to address the bad and promote the good, and just kind of keep doing that over and over again, I feel like. And in terms of like mistakes, I feel like a lot of this stuff is just natural. I think like if you follow your instincts, like you're going to start finding some bad culture, and then it's just a kind of a matter of like I said, weeding it out. Early on, I think like the biggest mistake that we made, and I mean really any startup for a certain period of time runs basically on miracle juice. Like you're not sure how you got to the next day, and every day is like a new miracle. And I think eventually you kind of, well, when you're learning to fly, you start with 2 buckets, they say. You start with a luck bucket and a skill bucket, and like over time you run out of luck, and then hopefully by that time you have enough skill. And I feel like that applies to startups very well. But one of the biggest mistakes that we made was being afraid to make mistakes. And it took several kind of jarring errors on my part before I kind of had to start to realize that like as a new CEO, I was going to screw up, and it wasn't a matter of like avoiding the errors and not making mistakes. It was a matter of dealing with them, and I think it's a pretty common business philosophy of kind of pivoting or adapting. But I think one of the things that we really had to embrace was being okay with making mistakes, and now we feel like that's important. Making mistakes is like a huge part of our culture. And we had to teach everybody at Phobio how to fail over time. And I think everybody, even like, it's an ongoing process, but that's one of the things I'm most proud of, is that everybody at Phobio seems to know how to fail really well, which it sounds maybe counterintuitive. But one of the things that we say now, and I say it all the time, and these guys in the back here are gonna love this, but is that I love the bad news. You know, it's great when you hear from customers. You know, I really like it when I hear, you know, oh, you guys are awesome, you know, like this is great, you know, like your service is awesome, and you know, I really like it when that happens. But I love it when somebody sends me an email and says, this is totally, you know, broken. I almost swore there for you. That's what I love, because that basically gives us an opportunity to be better, you know, and if we ignore that, if like we try to brush that under the rug, we'll never get better. So I feel like kind of taking that and adopting that to my life personally, and looking at everything that happens to me that is bad as an opportunity to be a better person. And then kind of like once I adopted that, it was kind of easy for me to kind of start talking about that change and like the positive impacts of it, and then it kind of starts to spread throughout your organization. And so I think as the top guy, like you have to say culture starts from the top, and if you feel like there's bad culture in your organization and you're at the top, like, you know, you should do something about it. So.
Yeah. I think it's very important that it does start from the top, because people will feed off your signals and messages. My theory, and what I've led many plants and organizations through the years, and I used to always tell them, I said, you gotta learn how to screw up. Pick yourself up, brush yourself off, and don't lose momentum. Rally the troops. It's not a big deal as long as you keep the screw up in the 4 walls. And because we're human beings, and we're going to make mistakes. So let's face them. Then you got to take responsibility. This whole thing of failing is going to really tell your true culture. Is how do you handle that? Can you take responsibility and say, yeah, I'm the one that did that? Ultimately, if you want to put and label whose fault it is, it's the top guy. Because nobody, all the years I've been working in my profession, I've yet to see anybody come into work to screw up. People will do whatever you give them, or whatever you tell them, or give signals to. So, you know, ultimately, it's the top guy's responsibility to set them up to win. And you got to take that responsibility and make sure the people understand the culture.
I'm going to shift gears a little bit in terms of the question. There's many of you probably have heard this quote. It's originally a Drucker quote, but it's gained more prominence in the past few years. And the original quote was, "Culture eats strategy for breakfast." It's since been changed to lunch. I don't know why I had to switch meals, but it did. And so, what's your perspective on that quote?
I'll dive in on that. So culture eats strategy for breakfast or lunch
Or both.
or brunch.
Or brunch. Yeah.
I don't know. That doesn't make any sense to me. That sounds like a ridiculous saying, and I would never say it. I think we're a new company. I don't know. There's a lot of stuff that we don't know. We break everything down into 4 quadrants. The known knowns, known unknowns, unknown unknown. So it's like, I don't know. Maybe this is an unknown unknown to me. Phobio guys are loving this in the back, I'm sure. Our strategic planning is almost like a part of our culture. It's just on the sign next to our kind of cultural foundation on the wall is our strategy for the next 20 years. And I mean, I think it's like we're constantly trying to repeat that. We keep it very simple, 3 points, and then we have 4 objectives each year. It's very simple stuff, and we try to keep it simple so that we can kind of communicate it. And everything that we've kind of boiled down, and maybe that's part of our culture is make things simple packages that people can digest. Because ultimately we need to transmit this stuff and they need to digest it effectively. So I don't know.
Yeah, so I'll go a little bit different route. So, to me, it does make sense, that quote. The way I see it, like I said earlier, is culture is really your DNA. That defines who you are, your business, your character, your goals, where you're going. And strategy, I agree with Stephen that it's the way you run your business, but strategy in our business, we're changing, whether it's quarterly or monthly. But the culture is really the base of how you're going to create a strategy. So I can relate to that, but that's my 2 cents.
You can have the best systems, best strategies, but always remember the number 1 asset in any organization is people. They got to execute. And that's why I think that statement is so true. Without the right people and executing the strategy, you're not going to get anywhere. So
I'd maybe look at that quote a little differently. I'd actually, if I could share any piece of knowledge that I've learned the hard way with all of you guys who are out in the fields, is we went from 6 stores to 46 stores basically overnight, and we didn't have the infrastructure, we didn't have the strategy, we had a dream and we went after it, and it flopped. I mean, it was hard. We purchased 37 stores overnight, and 5 months later we'd closed down 17 of them. And one thing that was really apparent to me is, if you guys are growing your businesses and wanting to enhance your culture, you've got to find your strategy. It wasn't until we were able to start finding our strategy, figuring out where we wanted to be in the next year, next 2 years, next 5 years, we really needed to clarify that and be able to write it down on 1 page. And if you can't do that right now, I would really encourage you to spend some time with your leadership and learn about what you guys want to be or what you guys want your companies to become.
So I'm going to ask one more question, then I'm going to come down with a mic for you guys to start drilling down into some questions. How do you assess the health of your culture?
Well, I'll jump in. So it's really 2 ways, actually 3. So, of course, customer feedback, NPS, or whatever customer feedback responses you have, because if customers recognize a bad or unhappy buying experience, then 9 times out of 10 you have unsatisfied employees. And then the other piece is, in our organization, we're extremely aggressive growth as well, and we could not be where we are without the people that helped build our organization. And that was all the culture, that was the passion, that they wanted to grow. And we do kind of a health check with our teams by doing random surveys. We do something called Start, Stop, Continue. And one of the mistakes that I made early on was that I was since I'm very passionate about the business, it was very hard for me to get the real feedback. And then once I learned and evolved, I said, you know what, I have to be vulnerable and I have to take the feedback from my team. I can't have a closed door about it, because if I want to grow this organization and grow my team and make them feel a part of the organization, they have to be able to vocalize their thoughts. And so we do health checks, we do Start, Stop, and Continues, we measure customer feedback responses very, very carefully. In addition to that, we go to our partner Verizon and we ask them to assess our store and our experience. in the location. So we look at it from 3 different standpoints.
What's the frequency of doing surveys like that and analysis?
Yeah, so it's a good question, Scott. So one thing we found is that doing it too much kind of puts a red flag out there that somebody thinks there's something wrong, so you're putting it out there enough. So something like a start, stop, continue, in our experience, we do about twice a year, and no more than that, because the other piece that's really important to that is once you get the feedback, you have to do something with it. Because if you don't want to do anything with it, then it just turns into, these guys are just getting one-way communication, and then they don't feel a part of a change if they're looking for a change. And then as far as customer experience, that's daily. We look at NPSs every day.
Stephen, you're going to...
Yeah, so I think, we have a similar thing. I think it's really hard to kind of figure out how you're going to measure it, but like we feel like, you have to measure everything, and anything you measure becomes instantly better. So we kind of basically broke it down into a couple of different, areas that we needed to measure routinely. Some of them are weekly measurements, some of them are monthly. But so culture really exists in the relationship between people, So we, like Terry mentioned, we have these gap meetings, growth, accountability, partnership. So once a month, every employee everybody sits down, and it's a 360 review. So I had to do 7 of them a month with the 7 direct reports that I have, and we just cover 3 questions. What are your wins? What are you working on? And what can I do to help you? The team support. And so basically it's an opportunity for them to blow their own horn, opportunity for them to say, I totally screwed this thing up, but I fixed it, and this is how it's never going to happen again, and then an opportunity for them to tell me that they need something from me. And then we turn it around, and then I tell them what I think my wins and what I'm working on and what I need from them. And they tell me the things that they feel like I screwed up, and it's a pretty interesting conversation. So we can take that basically simple survey, and then we basically count the wins. So if like across an organization, if our wins are kind of growing, it's pretty good. And then we publicize the wins. We don't publicize the working on. That's just kind of like between the 2 people who were in the GAB meeting. And then another thing we measure is ideas. We actually, along with our really awesome trade-in software, we have this huge back-end. One of the apps that we use internally is a thing we call Ideas. And it basically is any employee at any time can issue an idea. Everything from Thirsty Thursdays, that was actually an idea. We called it something else, but same concept. To, hey, I think it's totally crazy that we're having these boxes shipped by UPS. We should have our own boxes designed, and it'll, use less paper. All these kind of ideas, and then we go through every month, and we feel like creativity is kind of like the act of bashing 2 ideas together. So we kind of have a big idea meeting where we go through and we take the ideas that weren't quite fully formed enough to just come alive on their own, and we make them come alive. And then also, there's a voting feature, so you can, all employees can go in, they can read through the ideas, they can vote them up, and then, there's a handful of people who can just make ideas happen if they feel like it's really that good. And so we measure the number of ideas. So if we feel like ideas are trending down, we kind of use that as a red flag of okay, we're not listening enough, we're going in the wrong direction. A kind of shorthand that Terry and I use is that if you're 10 steps ahead as a leader, you're a martyr. If you're 2 steps ahead, you're kind of in the perfect spot. So normally we just kind of take it to mean that we haven't provided enough guidance, or we're getting too far ahead of people, or that kind of stuff. So it's a good way for us to be able to kind of adjust our throttle.
Thank you.
I'll just add a little, as far as getting too far ahead of people and the responsibility of making sure you know where they're at, because that is so important, because you will become a martyr. Why don't you know this? Why aren't you up to this? Part of all this is that joins into your culture is your strategy. And one of the things that we've always done too is, what are we passionate about? What are we the best at? And then what is your economic driver? Those are 3 things that if you do not know in your business, you better find out what it is. Because man, you can lose it quick. Because that helps you to stay tuned and focused in on what you really need to be doing. Not what you want to be the best at, but what you are the best at.
Could you repeat those 3 again? Say them again.
Okay, what are you passionate about? Why are you doing what you're doing in your organization? What are you really passionate about? And then what
What are you best at?
What are you best at? Not what you want to be the best at. What are you the best at? And then you identify your economic driver. Is it per customer, per visit? You need an economic driver to understand that, and you keep turning it. And we found that out in our business, and there's ratios and everything else. It drives that whole thing, and it's amazing. Once you educate your people and they know what that means, and they'll grab a hold of it, and that's part of the culture too, because they'll just know what to do with it. They know how they contributed. We took the whole organization and we listed the 7 key asset drivers in your business. You need to do that at the same time. What are those asset drivers? Number 1 is people. Number 2 is our customer base. Number 3, we might have engineering. Number 4, so on. We had 7, and finance is always last. Because if you take care of your assets, and nourish those assets, you'll be successful. The finances will come out.
That's right. Thank you. Questions from the floor? Okay, just I'll run back here, Kevin. I'm going to run back there and I'll be back up here. This is good exercise for me. I ate a cookie on the break. Those things are freaking delicious. Thanks, Scott.
I'm curious, this may not be possible, but one of you mentioned that you use a 360-degree review. I'm just curious, in 20 seconds or less, how does that get implemented? Who participates in it, and what have you seen for outcome from that?
It's great. Everybody loves it, which is weird. You'd think, like, a lot of times I think annual reviews are a very stressful time, not only for the kind of supervisor, but also the team member. So doing it monthly with everybody, it's just kind of a normal thing. And as people kind of proceed through any given month, they're thinking about their wins and working on and how they're kind of present this information. Usually it's pretty quick. I think the average gap meeting is about 25 minutes, and that would include the full 360. So we just kind of get to the point, like a very, maybe even kind of like, with a brutal directness, identify, what are your wins, what are you working on, and team support. So it basically, that's it. So we have a document. It's called a gap survey. At the top, wins. Then we have like 3 inches of space. Working on, it's 3 inches of space. Team support, and we fill it out as a Google Doc, share it. So the kind of people team lead, Terry was kind of alluding to these the teams that we have. They're all based on our asset drivers for our business. So we have 7 of them. The first of which is the people team. So the people team lead is responsible primarily for making sure that everybody has a 360 gap meeting every month, and that the results of that gap meeting are being logged, and the wins are shared, and then we kind of count everything up, and it kind of goes into our what we call our business operating system. So it's pretty easy. We've been doing it from the very early on, and like initially there was a lot of skepticism just because we're a startup. I call us a startup even still today, even though we're growing. It's more a function of our growth, not our size. But guys who start things don't usually like structure, or they just want to like throw spaghetti at the wall and like anything goes. So like when we started to kind of make this transition from the beginning of something to the sustaining of something, that was kind of right maybe 2 years ago when we kind of implemented gap meetings. And the original founders were hesitant to participate. I think, but after a couple of months, everybody loves it. It's a fun thing to be able to kind of, toot your own horn, say, hey, you didn't know this happened, but I totally we had one account and this thing happened. I totally saved the day, and nobody really knew about it, but I just want to talk. So it's a great opportunity for people to kind of blow their own horn. And a big cultural thing for us is facing the pain, is what we call it. And basically being direct, understanding that you're going to make mistakes. You just have to own it and react to it, And it doesn't really matter how bad things are when they happen. It's all about how you react to it, So it's an opportunity for people to live that every month.
Thanks, Stephen. Hi. What methods do you guys use to communicate your culture and values to the furthest reaches of your organization? Or maybe how do you keep that message from being diluted once it gets to your frontline people?
Yeah, so that's it's a great question because it's reality. You know, in our organization, you know, you may go through 5 layers of people or management to the front line. So one of the things that we implemented in our organization is we have a 2-week onboarding program, and we literally spend 1 full day all on customer experience, and that's all really about our culture. And that then is inspected and expected from our store managers and leadership team. Every meeting we start in our organization, it starts with our mission statement, and that's been, you know, for the past 5 years. And we keep it front of mind, front of sight, and that really is the foundation, and we're always talking about it. It's measured just as much as any other KPI that makes us money, because this, in our belief, is the reason that our business is where it is and will allow us to grow. So it's talked about from head to toe, but it does get diluted, and you just got to keep pounding it.
If I can add to that, I think it's all about repetition. I think there's a John D. Rockefeller quote that says people aren't listening to you until they're mocking you, and I think Terry and I both people are these things that I'm saying. I'm sure the guys in the back are like, face the pain, all of these things. We have to just keep repeating it over and over again until everyone's like, oh, here he comes again with his facing the pain. So that helps.
To answer that, I don't think we do a real good job at it, actually. I mean, it's what I lose sleep on, I guess, is how we do that. And I believe we met earlier, and I believe you said you're a trainer. You know, in my mind, you're in the perfect role, and everybody in this room, whether you're an owner or you're an inventory member, you guys, the way you treat the people around you is what creates the culture. And if the owner does a good job at it, hopefully then the directors will do a good job at it. And if the directors do a good job at it, hopefully the district leaders will do a good job at it. But it's every one of you guys out there talking about the company that you work for and being excited to be a part of something that's not yourself. So in your role as a trainer, I think there's no better opportunity to share the culture of your company because you're getting kind of people at their most excited state. They're engaged, they're ready to learn. I like to talk to our team about the fact that, well, we might as well just dump 30 pages of paperwork on them, because in the first 2 days they might read it, because after the first 30 days they won't read a 1-sentence email. So just kind of being diligent and kind of crushing through it over and over and over again is I think maybe if anything has resonated, that has resonated.
One of the things that we've done is, again, we broke up into teams and asset drivers. And those teams are learning centers. And we constantly, how Stephen, he creates that culture. He starts with the top guy. He does that with his staff, and each one of his staff is a team leader. And they go down and they duplicate his methods of teaching people how to think and correcting problems, analyzing things, and just teaches the culture of culture is what you do every day, how you think and act. And so it starts from the top, and then we duplicate that effort to the staff, and then the staff takes it to their team. And so that's driven down in a systematic manner. It takes 69 times to make a habit. And so we constantly repeat, and we do it through stories. We try to learn to tell good stories that people can connect with. And that is the best way that I've seen to really build culture, is get people into it.
Great, thank you. Question? Oh, yeah, back there.
I can probably yell.
I can hear you.
I could probably throw this over too. But that'd be dangerous.
Hi, my name is Phil. You talk about culture and the impact of culture within your organization. How often are you engaging in your employees, not your managers, but your employees, to show that culture? Because sometimes you talk about diluting that culture by the time it gets down, but sometimes people want to see their leaders, especially the ones that own the company, engage with their employees. How often do you guys do that?
Well, I'll speak first. So I'm in the stores, to be honest, not as much as I want to be, but for the first 3 years, I was working in the store every day. With the teams now, 50% of my time is my objective to be in the stores, and I'm not there to really manage. I'm there to observe and celebrate the wins and reinforce the teachings of the organization. And then if there's opportunities, then I do that with senior management one-on-one, because the last thing that I want to do is send the message that I'm there to come in there and bash on them. So I'll go in there and celebrate the wins. And in reality, if I'm in the stores 2 days a week, that's great. And so it's very important to lead from the front, not lead from the back, in my opinion. And so I'm kind of the guy with the rope pulling my team, saying this is where we're going, this is how we're going to do it. And shake hands, get out there and help customers, and you'll really blow your team away, because then they see it firsthand. This is how it's supposed to be. So and my personal opinion, can't be a CEO or run a business from a desk.
Great answer, thank you. That actually concludes our time, so I want to thank the panel members. Great job, guys.